101 missiles and drones fired at a single U.S. Navy aircraft carrier. 101 shot down. Not one reached the ship. That was not a training simulation. That was not a test. That happened in real combat during the Iran conflict in early 2026, and it was the single most concentrated aerial attack ever launched against an American warship in the modern era. The carrier didn't move. It didn't retreat. Its aircraft kept flying. Here are the 5 systems that made that possible and why most people have never heard of any of them. The U.S. Navy currently operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Each one is roughly 1,000 feet long. The length of the Empire State Building laid on its side displaces over 100,000 tons of water and carries a crew of more than 5,000 people. They are, without question, the largest warships ever built. For decades, critics have argued that carriers are too big, too slow, and too visible to survive modern warfare. China's DF-26 ballistic missile, marketed as the carrier killer, was specifically engineered to sink one. Iran, the Houthis, Russia, and North Korea have all built their military strategies around the idea that carriers are giant targets. And every few years, analysts publish confident predictions that the age of the carrier is over. Those predictions keep being wrong. Here is why. Reason 1. The eye in the sky. Before any enemy weapon can threaten an American carrier, something has to see it first, and the carrier's eyes are not on the ship. They are 300 miles away, 30,000 feet in the air. The E-2D Advanced Hawkeye is a twin turboprop aircraft that flies continuously in orbit above and ahead of the carrier strike group. On top of its fuselage sits a large rotating radar dome, roughly 24 feet in diameter. That dome houses the ANA PY-9 radar system, a piece of technology so sensitive it can simultaneously track hundreds of airborne targets across more than 300 nautical miles in every direction. To put that distance in real terms, if an E-2D were orbiting over Washington, D.C., it would be watching the skies above Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Richmond at the same time. Here is what makes that critical. A radar mounted on a ship, no matter how powerful, is limited by the curvature of the Earth. A ship radar 100 feet above the water can see roughly 12 nautical miles to the horizon. A sea-skimming cruise missile flying at low altitude would be invisible until it was almost on top of the ship. Put that same radar at 30,000 feet and the horizon stretches out to more than 200 miles. Low-flying missiles that would be invisible from the deck are spotted with minutes of warning to spare. The E-2D does not just watch. It talks to everything in the strike group simultaneously, sharing its picture in real time with the destroyers, the fighters, the submarines, and the carrier itself. Every other defensive system in this list depends on the Hawkeye to tell it where to look. Take away the Hawkeye, and the entire defensive network goes partially blind. Keep it airborne, and the strike group sees threats forming before most adversaries even know they've been detected. Reason 2. The missile shield. Once a threat is spotted by the Hawkeye, the next layer is the one most people have at least heard of, but almost nobody understands how deep it actually goes. The Aegis combat system is the backbone of carrier strike group air defense. It runs on the guided missile destroyers and cruisers that travel with every carrier. Each Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries up to 96 vertical launch cells, sealed tubes built into the ship's deck that can fire surface-to-air missiles within seconds of receiving a targeting solution. The newest Flight 3 variants of the destroyer carry the ANSPY-6 radar system, which is 30 times more sensitive than the previous generation. capable of tracking targets at ranges exceeding 150 nautical miles. The missiles themselves come in layers. The SM-6 is the longest-range interceptor in the Navy's inventory, capable of engaging threats more than 150 miles out, including ballistic missiles in their terminal descent phase. The SM-3 goes further still, engaging ballistic missiles outside the Earth's atmosphere. The evolved Sea Sparrow handles closer, faster threats, and if something gets through all of that, the carrier itself carries its own short-range missiles and guns as a final backstop. In April 2024, 2 Aegis-equipped U.S. Navy destroyers in the eastern Mediterranean fired SM-3 Block 1B missiles at Iranian ballistic missiles targeting Israel, the first time in history those missiles had been used in live combat. They worked. The following year, during the USS Eisenhower's 7-month deployment in the Red Sea, the Carrier Strike Group flew more than 13,000 sorties, fired more than 80 air-to-air missiles, and launched 350 air-to-surface weapons while defending against sustained Houthi attack campaigns. The group was never hit, and those 2 examples were not the limit of what Aegis can do. They were routine operations. Reason 3. The invisible weapon. Here is something that almost never appears in carrier coverage, and it may be the most decisive capability of the 3. The ability to make the enemy's weapons stop working before they are ever fired. Every carrier air wing includes a squadron of EA-18G Growlers, electronic warfare aircraft built on the same airframe as the FA-18 Super Hornet fighter, but fitted with jamming equipment instead of bombs. Each Growler carries up to 5 ALQ-99 tactical jamming pods under its wings and fuselage. Those pods intercept enemy radar frequencies, analyze them in real time, and flood them with targeted electronic noise, creating what operators call a whiteout effect on enemy radar screens. To an adversary radar operator, the entire airspace goes blank. During Operation Epic Fury in early 2026, EA-18G Growlers from the USS Gerald R. Ford and the USS Abraham Lincoln operated together to suppress Iranian air defense networks. Their jamming blinded S-300 radar systems and cut communication links between Iranian command centers and missile batteries. Enemy commanders could not coordinate orders to their own launchers. The fight for one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the Middle East began and ended in the electromagnetic spectrum before a single strike aircraft crossed the coast. If enemy radar cannot see the carrier's aircraft, it cannot guide weapons toward them, and weapons that cannot be guided cannot hit anything. The Growler does not destroy enemy defenses with explosives, it renders them irrelevant. That is a fundamentally different kind of weapon, and it operates at the speed of radio waves, essentially instant across any tactical range. If this kind of layered capability is what brought you here, hitting like takes 2 seconds and helps more people find this content. Because the next 2 reasons are the ones that almost nobody talks about. Reason 4. The underwater shadow. The surface defenses get most of the attention. The threat that naval officers lose sleep over is underneath. Attack submarines represent the most difficult threat to counter in carrier defense, and the U.S. response to that threat is itself submarine-based. Each carrier strike group typically deploys with 1 or 2 Virginia-class or Los Angeles-class nuclear-powered attack submarines. Those boats operate well ahead of the carrier group, running silent in waters where adversary submarines might try to position themselves. Their job is to find and neutralize enemy submarines before those submarines can get within weapons range. Layered on top of that are MH-60R Seahawk helicopters flying continuous anti-submarine patrols from the carrier and its escort ships. Each helicopter drops sonobuoys, small disposable underwater microphones, into the water around the group's path. Those sensors listen for the acoustic signature of a submarine engine. The helicopters also dip active sonar directly into the water during search operations. Surface ships trail towed array sonar systems, long cables fitted with hydrophones that can detect submarines at distances of dozens of miles. Together, these systems build a continuous acoustic picture of the water around the carrier that is extraordinarily difficult to penetrate undetected. No U.S. aircraft carrier has been attacked by an enemy submarine since World War II. The underwater screen is not the most glamorous part of carrier defense. It is one of the most effective. Reason 5. The last line. If a threat somehow penetrates every outer layer, the Hawkeye, the Aegis missiles, the Growler jamming, the submarine screen, the carrier itself has a last resort that operates entirely on its own. The Phalanx close-in weapon system is a 20mm Gatling gun mounted in a white dome on the ship's deck. Its nickname among sailors is R2-D2, for obvious visual reasons. It fires 4,500 rounds per minute, 75 rounds every single second. It operates on a fully automatic radar-guided system. The moment its sensors detect an incoming threat, it calculates the intercept point and fires without waiting for a human command. No operator approval, no hesitation. The entire engagement from detection to firing happens in a fraction of a second. Alongside Phalanx, the rolling airframe missile system provides a complementary close-in layer using guided missiles rather than bullets, capable of engaging faster, more maneuverable threats that a gun might not track in time. Together, these systems form the final ring around the carrier, operating in the last few seconds before impact. Closing. In 2026, 101 weapons were fired at an American carrier. Every single one was intercepted or jammed before it reached the ship, not because of luck, not because the enemy failed, because 5 overlapping defensive systems, the eye, the shield, the electronic blackout, the underwater screen, and the last resort gun all worked exactly as designed simultaneously in real combat. No carrier is invincible, the Navy will say that itself. But the gap between the threat and the defense has never been wider than it is right now. Drop your take in the comments. If you had to remove one of these 5 layers, which one do you think the carrier could actually survive losing, and which one is the non-negotiable? There is no obvious answer to that question.